Well, welcome again to another Cutting Edge show. I'm Omar Neal, one of the moderators of this great program. This program is being brought to you in part by the School of Public Health at the University of Maryland. This is a wonderful day because we're going to have a wonderful show. This is the Cutting Edge, where we discuss all things COVID-19, health, wellness, and beyond. The show is like off the chain. And when I mean that, we're going to really discuss something that is so necessary, so needed, so essential in understanding how we can coexist in a civilized society. We're going to be talking about the poison of toxic masculinity. And we got the people to do it with. Our panelists are the perfect people to have this discussion with. We're going to be talking with Dr. John Hart, who is the Initiative Associate Director of the Vera Institute of Justice. And then we have Dr. Rabiatu Barry, who is Assistant Professor in Family Science at the University of Maryland. And then we have Dr. Kevin Roy, who is a professor in family science at the University of Maryland as well. So we have a family affair here today. This is a wonderful conversation we're going to have. And as you know, I don't do this by myself. I have this dude is a sidekick, a brother from another mother. His name is Dr. Stephen B. Thomas. We call him Dr. T amongst these parts. He's a professor at the University of Maryland School of Public Health, as well as the director of the Maryland Center for Health Equity. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming my co-moderator, Dr. Stephen B. Thomas. Hey, Dr. T, how you doing, man?
You know, Mayor, it's always good when I'm in a space with you, even when it's a virtual space.
Uh-oh.
And the time's
Absolutely.
coming when it's time for us to get back together
Oh, absolutely.
in person.
Absolutely, man. I'm telling you, Dr. T, we have the Cutting Edge has this reputation that there is nothing that we won't discuss. We believe that all issues are on the table, and it's a way to discuss anything. We also believe that we all are possessors of some truth, and as we bring our truths together, then and only then do we get closer to the truth. So we seek your truth. No matter who you are, you don't have to think like Dr. T or myself. You just have to think like you. And let's see if we can synthesize our truths, that we can all grow from each other's perspective, the prism by which we see things and see life. Dr. T, this whole thing of toxic masculinity, that's a huge subject, man. And sometimes I think we kind of just brush over it and don't think about it, but it is infiltrated in itself and incorporated itself in all people activity. And it is now high time that we have a candid conversation about this poison of toxic masculinity. What say you?
Well, Mayor, I was in all day in what was called a social justice boot camp, where high school students, 11th and 12th graders from all across the metro area and the city of Baltimore were bused into our campus.
Wow.
Spent all day on campus. And Meg Jordan and I had a small group that was committed to discussing health equity. And the very issue we're talking about tonight came up among these young people. They didn't say the word toxic masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
But in the moments as we work with them on the Post-its and on the boards and got them being interactive, created the kind of safe space, they began to share what their lived experience. I was stunned. They're walking around with my 15-year-old cousin who was like a brother to me. I went with him everywhere he went. Dead, shot, with the kind of detail, shot through the heart by his friend.
Wow.
Bullet pierced his heart, comes out the back. That's a lot of detail. And I'm hearing her pain as she's describing it. She says to me, I'm really an introvert. as she's talking. I said, imagine yourself in class. You're in the math class. You're thinking about your cousin. You're not paying attention in class. Does the teacher have any idea what you're going through? You
Right.
know what she said, Mayor?
What?
I would never tell them. I
Yeah.
would never tell them this. And that hurt me, that the adult, potential, I think about the role that teachers play, that whatever was going on in that school, this young woman did not feel safe enough to share that vulnerability. But she shared it with me, almost a stranger, you might say, meeting this person for the first time. So I'm saying to myself, how might we create that kind of safe environment, that kind of, in a pop-up, be it in a workshop like Meg and I did today with the Judge Alex Williams Center, or even right here in the cutting edge, because I think we have that same level of self-disclosure, that same level of vulnerability
Mm-hmm.
in the space that we've created here. And that's why tonight is so important when we talk about toxic masculinity. I'm not even going to assume I know what it is. I
Right.
want to know what it is. I want to know, is it infectious? Does it spread? Is it born with it? Or is it something you learn? Is it nature or nurture? Because I don't think babies are born and even grow up think, I'm going to just go out and shoot up my school, or I'm going to go out and hurt somebody. How does that happen? And I'm hoping we're going to learn about that tonight, and how a young person like I talked to today can take that story and not make it bitter, not make it, oh, I want revenge. How do we break the cycle? I'm hoping we hear that today.
Well, I hope so as well. Powerful evening, and I'm glad that you all have joined us. Let me say this. You see Dr. T and myself up front, but you don't see the people who really make it happen. We call them the team behind the scene, headed up by our technical director, Meg Jordan. Our assistant technical director is Maggie Daly. Saria Khan is our social media coordinator, and of course, um, Elijah Pugh Jr., sound designer. And so, we want to make sure that you stay in touch with us as well. We are connected in all of the social media network platforms to include Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and more. Please like, share, and just stay in touch with us with all that we do here on the cutting edge. We also have another way you can stay engaged with the cutting edge, and that is by subscribing to our newsletter. You see the QR code there. You can just do that, subscribe, and each week you'll get through your email, or in your email, you'll get our newsletter. It's wonderfully done. Maggie Daly is the person who put it together. I want people to know that we have a guru in newsletter production.
You got that right.
And she just does a wonderful job. You can catch all of our previous shows because we put each show the previous week in the newsletter, so you never miss what we are doing here on the cutting edge. Also, we take vignettes of guests that we've had and panelists, and kind of cut them up into small vignettes and put those in the newsletter as well. Always something that's important in terms of understanding, health and other issues associated with health, COVID-19 and beyond. So, Dr. T, man, are you ready to start? Are you ready to rumble? Are you ready to get this going?
We got a panel of Terps. They all have University of Maryland College Park connection. And interesting enough, a connection to our Department of Family Science. I think that's important because we're literally training the next generation of family therapists. So these are folks who work with family dynamics. And one of the things, again, from the kids today, when we ask them the kind of things that can get under their skin, that can create anxiety,
Hmm.
and family comes up.
Right.
Because, you know, family knows how to push your buttons.
Right.
And so we have the very kind of counselors tonight that know how to deal with issues around family dynamics.
Yeah. Well, that's wonderful. Well, let's bring up our first guest. He needs no introduction. He's not been on for a while. He's been around taking care of some twins. But Dr. John Hart, he is the initiative associate director of the Veer Institute of Justice. You know this young man you've known him a long time, Dr. T. So you introduce this brother.
Well, let me just say, one of the real advantages, one of the real privileges, I call it a blessing, of being a teacher, is the chance to touch eternity. And I say that when I think about John Hart. I remember when he was a student. I remember when he was, you know, trying to find money to pay his tuition. I remember when he needed a job and we gave him a job, and the brother just soared. And now he is out practicing his profession, a new dad. Oh, I can't wait to bring John back and ask him, hey, John, did we prepare you for the real world that you are now in working? Did we get you ready?
Well, you have that opportunity now, ladies and gentlemen. Without any further ado, let's bring on Dr. John Hart. Hey, man, how you doing, fella?
Let's snap him up.
Let's
Come on.
snap him up.
That's
Snap
how
him
we
up. Let's bring him up
Hope
right.
you didn't forget that,
Yeah,
John.
yeah, absolutely. Hey, man, what's going on?
Thank you guys so much. Happy Thursday to everyone. I'm doing well. Got very sentimental just hearing Dr. T talk, but also mention the ties. Yeah, I've definitely come a long way. I'm really proud of where I am, but I would not have gotten to this point without folks like, you know, Dr. Stephen Thomas, Dr. Kevin Roy, who not only gave me an opportunity, but took a lot of time to really pour into me. And I'm so grateful for the both of them that anytime I've given talks since I left grad school, I always mention those two and a few others because the University of Maryland School of Public Health, they trained me well. There's not been a task or anything that I've not been able to think through as a researcher, as a clinician. And so, yes, Dr. T, you guys have done well. And I'm always grateful for all the opportunities that you and Dr. Roy and so many people at the University of Maryland have provided. So excited for a great conversation. Mayor O'Neill, always great to see you, brother. Looking sharp, looking sharp.
Absolutely.
Hey, you know, Dr. Hart, let me just say this, because now it's coming to me that one of the ways I was able to hire you and we put you to work, we put you to work in the barbershops.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want the wellness warriors out there to know that this young man earned his PhD working with us in the barbershops, bringing counseling services into the barbershops. We literally did counseling services in the shop. And John, just a little thumbnail when you think back about those moments, doing your job, doing clinical services in a barbershop versus in a, you know, a private office.
Yeah. Yeah, it's different. And I remember that time very clearly because not only on one hand, I was doing you know, counseling services in the barbershop with you guys. And then also I remember myself and Dr. Roy were also in the community and we're interacting with young adults, and I'm holding like psychoeducation classes. And then that evolved into even doing it inside the prison. So I was pretty busy. And those institutions, I'll highlight the barbershops and prisons, were very unique experiences when thinking about the role trauma plays, families, thinking about what masculinity looks like. Because if you've been in a barbershop, I mean, it just oozes masculinities of all kinds of versions. And then you go inside of a prison, right? Now, what a harmful, toxic environment that is, and how it can really shape people in certain ways. And so it's much different than being in a expensive office in trying to reach people, because dare I say, the same folks who are incarcerated, the same folks who are in the barbershop, not all of them, won't really find themselves in private practice office. And so there's an implication about making sure that there are community outreach, with the appropriate healthy outreach, folks who come with a level of understanding, compassion, and empathy for these folks, especially these young men of color. Because if not, then we're going to continue in a path that we've continued on as a society. So I'll say that.
Yeah, let me say this, man. Congratulations, Daddy.
I know, right?
Hey, man. Hey,
he
snap
got
him up,
twins.
man. Now, you didn't get just one. I mean, you just can't do anything, just have to, can you? You have to just knock it out the park, right? So tell us about what this has been like, because the last time you were on, the babies had not been born yet.
Yeah,
they were just about to be born,
exactly.
right?
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So tell us this last year what this was like.
Oh man, I am. It's been amazing. It's been one of the most humbling, loving experiences ever, to become a father. And it's also and I'm going to keep doing it, shouting out, Dr. Roy is, I remember one of the first articles I read from Dr. Roy was father stories, and my father story I already had father stories of what I had gone through with my own father, and then what that looked like. And so to become a dad, and we have a boy and a girl, and so I think about that a lot. And also it's been emotionally and psychologically and physically demanding. This is probably the hardest. I thought grad school was hard. I remember I used to be really stressed out during my dissertation. I mean, Kevin will tell you, Dr. T will tell you, I used to be super stressed, but parenting, oh my God. I mean, there were days where I couldn't remember. I told my wife one day, I said, I'm so tired, I think my teeth hurt. Like I had not gotten that much sleep in consecutive. I said, I think my teeth hurt. But no, it's been a blessing. The twins are now sleeping through. They're healthy. They're turning 1 in 2 weeks. And so we're just so blessed. They bring me so much joy. They've allowed me to really experience so much of I've been able to tap into other parts of my humanity. I think being a dad has really stretched me. So I'm blessed. And I also want to give a shout out to my wife, because I'm pretty sure she's watching. Love my wife dearly.
Absolutely.
Crystal, she's amazing. And shout out to all the moms out there, to see what mothers go through.
There you go.
Being present. Man,
wow.
I wouldn't be as great and be here with you guys without my wife. And so I thank her humbly, and she means the world to me. And so I just wanted to do that. I appreciate you guys allowing me that space for that.
Let me just say this one thing, John. I was very, very pleased that you included your fatherhood and what it means to you, and both the challenge and the opportunity in your professional bio that we had here today. I think that's so important. I want to salute you.
Thank you
for doing that, and encourage other dads.
I agree.
Do the same.
I agree. Yeah. But I learned from you guys, Kevin, Dr. Z. I mean, like, you guys help put a lot of this in my head. So thank you again. I'm so excited for tonight. Thank you.
Good. We love you, man. And
love you too.
For come hanging out with us.
Anytime.
Well, absolutely. Let's bring up our next guest. She really needs no introduction. She's been with us before. Dr. Rabiatu Barry was assistant professor in family science at the University of Maryland. The first time she came, she was talking about Black boys and dealing with mental health and Black boys and all of that. And so this is like peanut butter and jelly. This is like ham and cheese. This just go together for her. Just to bring her on into this space for someone who has dedicated her whole career primarily of trying to understand, what the challenges and opportunities of being in a certain skin, in a certain space, a certain culture, and how to navigate those spaces in a place oftentimes that's adverse to who you are and your personhood. And so to bring her on to this space, is absolutely critical that we hear her voice. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our next guest, Dr. Rabiatu Barry. Hey, Dr. Barry, how you doing?
Hi, how are you?
Good.
How's
It's
it
always
going?
good to
Snap
see
her
you.
up.
Let me
Snap
snap
her up.
you up,
Come on
snap
now.
you in.
Snap her up.
Now, obviously she's a Turk too, so she hangs out in the family, so she's a part of the family. How have you been, Dr. Barry, since we last saw you?
Good. Trying to get my stuff off the ground, trying to partner with community agencies to get received a grant from the university to develop a family-based intervention for youth who've been injured by gunshot. And so
Wow.
Just really trying to
Somehow you're
get that off the
freezing.
ground.
Okay,
And
go ahead.
also thanks to Kevin, we make a partnership with Roosevelt High School to start some civic youth engagement work. So yeah, that's what I've been doing, working.
Good.
And
Well,
Dr. Barry, on the buses, when the young students were coming on the campus today, the university buses picked them up.
Mhm.
And on our buses, we have all these slogans. Okay. You may have seen them. And one of them is fearlessly forward. Okay. Fearlessly forward. And I don't know if she's just frozen, but John, since you're a Terp and we have our next guest is a Terp, I want to know how we make that real. How the work you're doing, Dr. Barry, is fearless. You're talking about deconstructing stereotypes.
mhm.
Young Black boys. We saw a young Black boy knock on the wrong door and be shot through the door. And now there's a whole national discussion about the stereotype of young Black boy. Oh, he was 6 foot tall. The guy's 5'5".
Yeah.
So
But what if he was 6'4"?
there you go.
I mean, why we should not, let's not give any kind of justification for shooting someone who has not posed any threat to you, right? Regardless of your physical size. I think that's
right.
important. So we don't want to give license based on one's physical size. Okay. Go ahead, Dr. Barry. I see you are unfrozen now. Go ahead.
What am I supposed to be? Are we talking about the fearlessly forward?
Yeah. Now what?
Yeah.
You were asking a question to Dr. Barry first.
About the fearlessly forward.
Yeah, just your work. You're at Maryland. We're so-called fearlessly forward. What's fearless about your work in the spaces that you're going into that represent that challenge?
I mean, am I unfrozen? Okay, good.
You're good. We can hear you.
We can
I
hear you,
think-
but you're freezing up. Yeah, go ahead. Now you look like you're a karate person. Now you kung fu fighting,
And she's on campus. It should be better.
Yes. Hello. This
Go
supposed to be the good internet. I'm on campus. But
let me do this. Let me
I
do
think
this. Let me do this.
fearless in that
Doctor,
I'm not concerned
hold up, Dr. Barry. Let
with,
me a couple of things because you're freezing up a lot.
let me change my
Let me see if you can just come out for a second, and we're going to bring Dr. Roy on, and then
Yeah.
get you back into the mix because your contribution is too important not to hear it all, right? And to hear it properly.
I don't know what's
Okay,
wrong with this thing.
we're gonna do this. The team behind the scene. Let's see if we can help Dr. Barry to get a stable connection. Okay. All right. Let's bring our next guest, Dr. Kevin Roy. Now, if there is a person who has a favorable reputation that precedes them, then Dr. Roy certainly has that. They were talking about him. I didn't know whether or not to shake his hand or touch the hem of his garment. The way they were just praising this guy, and then to talk to him and to see the kind of genuineness and authenticity of his spirit. I can understand why people have a great affinity for him. He's a professor of family science at the University of Maryland. And ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our new friend, a brother from another mother, Dr. Kevin Roy. Hey, Dr. Roy, how you
All
doing?
right, let's snap him up.
Good
Snap him
evening,
up.
everybody.
What's going
Thank
on,
you.
man?
I'm looking at the barbershop polls, and I'm just thinking I've made it. I've made it. I was like, I'm in the family. I'm sitting at the table. It's something I've waited for, and so very excited, very excited.
You know,
And so
go
many
ahead.
wonderful folks that I know here, and so I thought it's truly a family table. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, you're right, man. And again, this work is not new to you. This is your life work. You have really delved into this and tried to understand how this notion of toxic masculinity, uh, poisons relationships and create mental instability among people and get people to feel a sense of inferiority if they don't subscribe to a certain, a masculinity trait that they think they ought to have, and that's a very unfair thing for people. So I want to thank you for being forward thinking and to move into this space, because many people would find it difficult to do that.
Fearlessly forward.
I was gonna say that's exactly right.
Yeah, and
It's a-
I saw, and then I'm going to turn it over to you. There was something in your bio that Dr. Hart echoed. Dr. Hart said, I was doing daddy stories. Kevin had me doing daddy stories. And then I saw in your bio that one of the things you do in your research is participant observation and histories to get the stories. And sometimes it's trauma. In my opening, I talked about a young student that it came out. Can you say a little bit about how you create the space for that kind of truth telling, that kind of authenticity, that kind of vulnerability?
It's a great question. I think I learned very much by the seat of my pants. As a graduate student 30 years ago, went down the south side of Chicago, and there was a parenting program that was brand new about responsible fatherhood. And I had been listening to a story on NPR about guys who were locked up for not paying child support. And at the time, there was a lot of discussion about what's happening in the neighborhoods with moms and kids, but there was kind of crickets when it came to where are the fathers, where are the men.
Mm-hmm.
No one was talking about the fact that they've been locked up and that they're out of the community. And so I met some wonderful folks down on the south side who accepted me. They were kind of skeptical. They said, are you a missionary? And I said, no. And they said, are you Republican? And I said, no. And they said,
Why
what do you
would
want
they
to come
think
down
those
here?
things?
Yeah, right. Why do you want to come down
Well,
to King College, to work? And I said, you all are the only folks doing this work. And it just seems like it's really important. So I spent 5 years there and I listened and learned a lot. So part of what I think I learned is the community-based participant research. I mean, I learned it kind of without knowing what it was, but I spent 2 or 3 days a week down on the south side in those programs, and some weeks felt great and some weeks felt like I'm not getting it. But spending a lot of time with the young men who were fathers and that staff. And part of what I was really interested in is a life course perspective. I wanted to know not just, that they were fathers, but their people and their lives and what brought them to this point, and what does it mean to be a father then in the kind of long run. And I was very interested in their family experiences, growing up in the neighborhoods, whether it was in Chicago or elsewhere, the influence of their own fathers and mothers in their lives, their own extended families. So I listened a lot. I watched a lot. I kind of helped out where I could, and just asked people to tell me their story. And to be honest, no one had ever asked these men about their lives, and disclosure was an important piece of this. I'll say that one of my mentors, Dr. Philip Bowman at Michigan, who is just a profound senior scholar of Black men and masculinities, I went to him and I said, so some of these men are talking about some very difficult topics, particularly regarding their fathers. And I said, I'm not even asking questions. It's coming, and he looked at me and he said, you should feel privileged they're sharing this with you. And I said, I do. I'm trying to understand. I want to listen. And he said, you have to realize you're walking on sacred ground, and that your obligation is to be honest and speak with authenticity about that as best you can. And so that's always been a bar for me, is that if I'm part of this and folks are sharing this with me, that I have to work with respect and honesty and authenticity to kind of represent that, to share that any way I can. And I do think we don't do, as John and we've talked about many times, we don't do what we call drive-by research, which is, hey, nice to meet you. Give me your life story. I'm out of here, and I'll use it for my own career. I mean, that's not what we want to do. That's not community-based research. We invest in a program. We're there for 18 months, 2 years. We get to know the staff, and we talk about, we're here to help the program in any way we can, whether that's evaluation or other things that will help funding and help the program and the folks in the program. So that's kind of long term what we've been working on for a long time.
One go, Dr. T, you want to say something?
I just want to make something obvious, because he kind of moved over slowly. What's the white guy doing in the south side of Chicago?
Oh, Lord.
You a missionary? I mean, they went down the whole list. You could have turned around, Dr. Roy, and said, well, I can't do this, because we got people saying that. Oh, I don't speak Spanish, right? I don't look like the folks there. I can't do that work. You stayed. Just take a moment. What was your motivation? Because the people blessed you by opening up the way they did. That says something about you.
Yeah. It's a conversation I've had with myself for 30 years. John's laughing because we talk about this all the time. I still have, and I respect people come up and say, who are you to do this work? And I think that's an important question that I have to answer for everyone who asks me that, because I need to establish a relationship and bring myself to that question. I believe that if I work hard, I can understand people across borders of difference, be that race, be that gender, be that sexuality, what have you, because I'm human, but I need to really learn and listen, and it helps me grow too. So it's kind of it's an exchange that I've always been fascinated in. So whether that was an early sense of working for justice, whether that's a sense of trying to create policies that will support men who have very little support in their lives from anyone in the community, and definitely throughout the institutions in our societies. It just seemed to me that, at least initially, this was a program that was trying to do a little bit of good, and I thought, for men who need that, let's lean into that. So, and I've had some great mentors along the way. So I'll say that. John, one of them. John is, John's been my mentor along the way too. So
yeah,
I love it.
Yeah, let me go into this, because we talk about social engineering and social constructs that are created that can give rise to, whether or not intentional or unintentional, issues of the absence in fatherhood within the African American community. I was thinking particularly about the public housing, and how they called it the projects when I grew up, right? And they would have people in the public housing, and one of the criteria for the ladies to remain in those homes is that the men could not be there. In fact, they would, if they found them living there, right, they would be in jeopardy of losing their homes. And so I want to know, did we think about the consequences of incentivizing the absence of the man in order for the woman to maintain a stable place for the children? And let me go to you, Dr. Hart first, and then I want you to piggyback, Dr. Barry, on this.
Yeah, it's that time period was a very critical part of when you think about the family life, the family dynamics, especially those who were living in the projects, who were predominantly low income families of color, right? And so this incentivizing structure where we're going to remove men from the homes in order for you to get help, right? Think about that, like how that actually sounds. We're going to remove a family member, a critical family member, a prominent family member, and not just any family member, the other parent to said children, in order for you to get help, is very antithetical around the idea of children are our future and we are a society that promotes families, right? That was very, very harmful because when you were bringing it up, Mayor Omar, I'm also thinking about who was showing up in those neighborhoods, right? You have surveillance and monitoring by white people. Folks can correct me, but it'd be a lot of white women who were in the social work field, and you would see brothers jumping out of the windows, when the social work is coming, right? And so to remove men from that family structure, from the community. And I also want to stress, from the community has also been a really big deal. It's one thing to remove men out of the actual family, because the family is one unit. When you're doing it so much and perpetuating to the point where so many men have now been removed from a community, you've left a level of vulnerability that is like beyond devastation. And it's not just for the mothers and the women and the children who are there. It also really hurts the men who are not there. And I'm just going to leave this here when I say this. And then think about, by incentivizing men need to be removed, you incentivize the women so that way they can keep getting help. Where are these men going? Prison. That's the other door that was waiting for them. That's the other psychological warfare that has been played when you think about how the removal of men, it's not just you remove them, they need a place to go. And dare I say, our society was revving it up on, we have a place for you.
Ooh, wow,
That hurts.
Right there.
That's powerful.
That hurts.
Dr. Barry, your assessment of this, because it's obviously, a lot of it's complex, and there are a lot of nuance to what has taken place to give rise to our current condition. But your thoughts about this?
I mean, Dr. Hart didn't miss. I think, particularly in the way laws were set up at the time, and that people were still going to jail for loitering. And so if you are being surveyed in the home by the social worker, and then you're being policed in the streets by officers, and there are laws still around like vagrancy and that really being a thing. If you're not in the house, and you're waiting to go back in the house, where are you going to go? Outside. And you're going to hang out in front of the store, in front of the barbershop, kind of like waiting for the home visit to be over to go home. Right? And so now you're being picked up for vagrancy, and stop and frisk, is before it was stop and frisk, it was just, you're Black and I can ask for whatever I want, your free papers, your ID, any of those things. Right. And so, I mean, and like you said, they didn't just leave the home, then they left the community once they were incarcerated. And particularly thinking about the role of county jails in the Black community, a lot of men never ever make it to trial. They just sit in a county jail for a year, and then they release them, right? And they might not charge, they might dismiss the charges, but they've still been gone for years. So now they have gaps in their work history. They might get them to plead down to whatever, so they don't have to go to trial, just so they can go home, but they've still been gone for 18 months. And so, I think that really is a problem. But personally, I think how it's come back to kind of bite us is that the Moynihan report that came out there afterwards And the way that it's being used present day around really driving a wedge between Black men and Black women around the way we understand the effects of the Moynihan Report and responsibility that's being taken, or accountability or blame that's being placed on how Black men are allowed to father based on that. And the claiming of the deficiency of the Black mother and the kind of tyranny of Black matriarchy on Black men. And so it had its immediate effects then, but like the worst part is that now, even 40 years later, 50 years later, I don't even know how the 60s, how old people are anymore. But like that now it's reemerged, but like in a way that this report that came out has now served as this kind of wave in pop culture around being divisive in the Black community, around how Black fathers parent, the role of Black men in households, and it being like a place of butting heads, where it used to be a place of, I think, empathy, has become a place of divisiveness, and our children suffer because of it.
You know, I was thinking, Dr. Roy, about my childhood, and when I was contemplating how this conversation would evolve, I thought about, living in the South with the obsession with guns being just kind of part of the culture of the South. Obviously, it's not relegated to the South. We know it exists all over. But when I was a child, we were at a very early age given cap pistols and water pistols and
as gifts.
those were that's the first thing you got. You got your pacifier and a water pistol. So that kind of went together. Water pistol. So we socialized, right?
Yes.
Our young boys into the gun culture very early, right? And therefore there is a implicit correlation between being a man, being a male, and having a gun, right? Which is a power tool, right, for people. So if you don't have one, then the implication is that you are powerless. And nobody who is a man, who is masculine, want to feel like they are powerless. Is that overly simplistic, Dr. Roy?
No, not at all. Not at all. In fact, that point has been made again and again and again in American culture. You could say it was written into the Constitution that we have a right to bear arms, and we defend our rights. And that's part of, that was aimed primarily at men, right? We have advertisements that basically when we sell rifles, they issue cards that says, this is your man card. And literally you get a copy of that when you buy the Bushmaster rifle, the automatic rifle, the one that was used in Sandy Hook. It's an advertisement campaign. And you could say, well, women buy guns too, but I don't know what they do with their man card, but there is a man card that's issued. So it's a very direct message. And to say that, oh, this is about mental health, it's about something else, I think really skirts the issue. It really does. I think that, a gun is it's a public health issue. It's by its very definition, right? Because guns are all about health. Whether we use them protect or hurt or what have you, this is about it's a basic health issue, right? So and it's about how you wield power responsibly, how much of that comes down to being a man, dealing with dealing with that responsibly. I think that one of the things so I teach a course called Man Up, and we get a lot of kids taking it every semester at Maryland. They're into it. And I kind of follow their lead in terms of what they're, just like Dr. T was mentioning today about the stories and the experiences and things they want to look at. And one of the things about toxic masculinity that I think, one of the things they come to class with, that they're saying, on social media, everyone now says men are just toxic because by virtue of being a man, they're toxic, right? And the students feel very conflicted. They say, I don't know if I feel that way. I'm a man. I'm not sure if that's true. And women feel the same way. Is that true? Like, tell us why that's not the case. And to the extent that I've been able to kind of give it back to them, I will say something like this, that when men feel threatened, manhood is precarious, right? We constantly have to earn our manhood. Even if I'm 55 years old and I'm walking down the street, someone calls me out, I got to step up. And the fact is, I've been a man, quote unquote, I guess, for a long time, but I have to prove that, constantly proving this, right? It's exhausting, but that's what we've set up. This threat, and there are interesting reasons that all came about, but the threat to one's masculinity causes men to step up and behave in certain ways, and they overcompensate. So, and it's not just a threat to one's gender in terms of masculinity. I think it's a threat to heteronormativity and cisnormativity. And to be honest,
hold on.
Is that a dance?
Wait, what'd you say?
Hold up. You can't use those kind of word on the cutting edge.
Okay.
Hold up
In the
first.
barbershop.
Is that a new dance? I just want to know.
It isn't. Well, no, it's been a dance that's going on for a while.
Okay. Well, then use some other words
I'll use
that'll help me. That
Good.
help me out with that. Put it where
Thank
the
you.
cows can get.
Thank you for stopping me.
Okay.
So, men who are straight and are threatened by gay men, by trans youth, by folks who put their own sexuality under threat or in question, or call them out. And the other piece I'll say is toxic masculinity, I think, is very much related to whiteness and white supremacy. I mean, I think a lot of expressions of white supremacy or of toxic masculinity come about because a sense of whiteness is threatened. That's another discussion we might have, but
that's a whole show, Dr. Roy.
That's a whole show, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think that when men feel threatened, and we see this with either gun violence in all the forms it takes, whether it's mass shootings or police brutality, whatever you want to call it, it's that threat and then the overcompensation, and men feel, I would say, they feel justified or permitted to being angry, violent. I mean, there's one track that they can go emotionally that a lot of men will channel themselves into, and that is, using force. And I think guns play right into that. So I think a lot of, if you look at the cases of mass shootings and track them over time, there's always some threat to typically a man who's involved in that. And there's always some threat to his masculinity. Someone dissed him. It was a former partner of his, or his ex-wife or girlfriend. It was some coworker. It was some guy at school. It was somebody, kind of who called him out in a way that he felt he couldn't take that, right? There was a threat to his respect. He was dissed. And so we overcompensate in that way.
Yeah. Dr. Hart, you are the perfect person for this next question, because you have twins, a boy and a girl, right? And when I was growing up, girls were sugar and spice and everything nice, and boys were rags and snails and puppy dog tails, right? and that when girls hurt themselves, we would coddle them and we would hold them and we would say, oh baby, what can daddy do? And then for little boy do the exact same thing, boys don't cry. Get up, brush it off. Yeah. Right. And so the emotional intelligence is suppressed at a very early age because we orientate, right, our young boys not to be in tune with their pain, right? Physical or emotional, right? How do you navigate in a space where we try to separate, masculinity from femininity, right? At the same time, give people an opportunity to be authentic with their own feelings, regardless of you being a male or a female?
No, I think that's a great question. And I think your question, as a clinician, as a researcher, and also, as you mentioned, like as a father, and um, there, even when you're given the example, our twins are starting to walk. So there's a lot of falling. It's a ton of falling. Okay.
Mhm.
We even had to move furniture out just so they don't hit their heads on something. So it's a lot of falling. And I would, in all honesty, I would say that the picking up and hugging after they fall and there's crying, we do that for both our son and our daughter. Like there's nothing where we would discriminate about that. And I think because of the work that I have done, right? Like here's the implication about masculinity, to be able, as I've done in the past, to go sit in someone's chair and seek therapy. I had to unlearn a lot of the things that was taught to me. And so to be able to pass that forward comes with a lot of conversations. I've over the years talked to my wife about what does it mean, in terms of masculinity, right? When you're expecting, you have conversations about what do we do if we have a boy, if we have a girl, how are we going to treat them? And a lot of it really does come down to some really, and I'm going to lead with this because this is how I am even in my work. It's coming from a humanity standpoint, a human dignity standpoint. There are overall values that are going to be very critical that everyone should be exposed to. So I'll give you a great example. Safety is a great example. I think regardless if you're talking to someone who identifies either as male, female, non-binary, masculine, feminine, there's this idea that we all have emotions, and what comes from those emotions are needs. Like this is the clinical talk coming out,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So if people have needs and they are emoting from those needs, by repressing their emotions, you're actually not even attending their needs.
Right.
And so that is a problem, meaning, hear me out, that kids are going through that. And then there are serious implications through, as Kevin was mentioning, through their life course, where when you communicate, don't cry, man up, all of that stuff. But then you go to a girl or a daughter or your niece or whoever, and you do something different. Those communications don't always add up to make sense. And like, it makes sense in the moment, but does it make sense down the line? Because at the end of the day, even when I work with men, and I work with men, women, I work with folks from all different backgrounds, to that idea, that dichotomy around masculinity and femininity, I talk about it, I bring it up, and I always ask, what do people understand for themselves, or what do those mean? And then I also ask, like, well, where did you learn these things, right? A lot of it's going to be my neighborhood, family members, stuff like that. And so the implications for the conversation, I always tell folks is, even when I've done work in prisons, is to say, like, look, just from a humanity standpoint, from a human dignity standpoint, people have needs, and people will emote. We all will emote. I even laugh sometimes. I'll be honest with you. I even laugh when I'm working with men, and they're like, yeah, like I don't have any feelings. So I'll be honest. I even laugh in session when I hear a client says, no, I didn't feel anything. I laugh because that does not make sense. My job is to help you to understand that you're not human. How can you say you didn't feel? But it takes conversation. It takes a lot of patience to slow people down, especially men who come from various backgrounds, to say, like, okay, so what were you thinking? You were thinking this. So what were you feeling to have you think like that? Well, I was feeling this. Okay, that's a feeling. But I go even deeper. And because you were feeling that, what was the need underneath there? Oh, I wanted to feel safe. Think about Kevin's point. You felt threatened. Someone dissed you, so you didn't feel safe. So what came out of that? Anger. Okay, but part of what I do sometimes is I even see myself as a father doing this with my kids, which is got to teach people around like their emotions. You have to. So you can say this, and I'm just saying, and masculine and feminine is important. But when you think about certain things that people aren't taught historically, I'll give you a list. Emotional regulation, emotional expression, emotional identification. And there's a slew of things that come under this term called emotional awareness that really isn't taught. So while we understand that math and social studies and science and all that stuff is great, why aren't we also teaching emotional awareness? Right? So we can blame communities, we can blame parents and all that other stuff, but we also understand that we're not taking the time in schools and in other institutions to slow people down and to have conversations about masculinity and feminine, meet them where they are, educate them, work with them, have the patience, know that they're going to mess up. Okay. Know that they're going to mess up. But when they mess up, here we go. We don't have to react as a society with anger. That's what we've been doing to Black boys and Black men all throughout the history of this country, is whenever they've shown any sign of vulnerability, weakness, we've stomped on them. And then we look simple and surprised when they react very angrily towards any kind of societal setup that comes from said reaction. And that's very, dare I say, incongruent at the end of the day when you think of what it is to be a human.
Right. You know, we're gonna bring in some of our stylists and barbers, and then we're gonna do we're gonna check on our pulse in terms of the word cloud and get our collective feelings together. But before I do that, I want to ask Dr. Barry a question. When I grew up, it was a song say it's a man's world, but you would be nothing without a woman or a girl. That was James Brown. But you know, it's a person by the name of Steve Harvey says you have to, you know, act like a woman, but think like a man to be successful in this society. And so because it's so male oriented in terms of success and in putting people in certain spaces, is there a pressure for women to set aside their feminine side because it is not advantageous to come across as a woman in this man's world situation?
It's funny you should say that. For Black women, as much as Black men have to earn their masculinity, we also have to earn our femininity. And our femininity actually comes, being anything that's perceived masculine actually comes as a cost to us, particularly in pop culture spaces. And even in scholarship, Tara Hurt actually did a paper on, she asked Black men why they thought that Black women were single. And chief among their responses was that Black women, in essence, act like men. And they want to be like men. They want to dominate spaces. They want to control things. And that we are not feminine enough in that this idea of not allowing men to lead and do these things. And so I think when we think about the history of Black people and Black women, I think the way that, like, you know, Kevin was talking about, like, white male patriarchy, the way that white male patriarchy deals with white women, a lot of Black men in their desire to need to earn their masculinity try to relate to Black women the way that white men relate to white women. And our histories are not the same, in a way that you can't relate to us the way that white men relate to white women, because we're not the same, right?
Mm-hmm.
There has never been a damsel in distress trope about Black women, right? That's never been, we were never in no tower, we were never laying down no hair, there was nobody coming on a horse, it was none of that. Right, so that doesn't apply to us. And so I think in the way that Black men are dehumanized, Black women are also dehumanized in the way that we think about survival. And as a community, survival has been the kind of trope and script that we live by, and we all get punished for however we survive. So Black men get punished for how they've learned to survive, and Black women get punished for how we've learned how to survive. And our families suffer because of it, because it divides us rather than unifying us, because everybody's fighting to survive, and is seeking reward and validation from somewhere. We don't even know, honestly, I don't think we know what we're looking for, right? We want Black men to validate us. Black men want us to validate them. We trying to validate ourselves. They're trying to validate themselves. Everybody's like trying to find a place to say who you are is okay. The way that you've shown up, the way you've learned to cope and adapt to American racism and the sequelae of American chattel slavery, you're okay. And I think we spent a lot of time in different decades trying to figure out how we're going to do that. And so I wouldn't say that Black women in particular get benefits from doing what is considered masculine thing, because people already think that way of us, that we are masculine. And that, as a matter of fact, we don't know how to turn our masculinity off, which is why we can't find or keep a man in heterosexual relationships.
You know, Dr. Berry, I feel like I should be taking your class, because the insights that you're bringing right now are so important. Now we're going to bring the barbers and the stylists into the room, and they may actually witness some of the very stereotypes that you are identifying that need to be rectified, deconstructed. Before they come in, give us a couple of examples of the kind of stereotypes of young Black boys that you deal with that need to be turned off, need to be corrected.
Like Dr. Hart said, I think the biggest struggle I have working with Black boys is we socialize the humanity and the emotional range out of them. So like they only know like happy, mad, sad.
Okay,
Sometimes they can
slow down, do that again. They only know
happy, mad, sad. They can give you frustrated sometimes, or something, that something's irritating or aggy, like this language that they use, but it's just kind of like very much happy, mad, sad. And so when I ask them about nuance, right, and how do you sit in the discomfort of like not knowing how you feel, right? And it's very interesting because pop culture has come up with a phrase that I think works well with them. Like, I feel some kind of way. Like, that's something that they're able to kind of like own, that like, I feel a way. I don't know what it is, but this made me feel some kind of way. And that's something like a middle ground that they're able to like wrap their head around.
But they can't name it.
They can't name it, but it made them feel some type of way. And it's something that like other people can relate to, right? Around like, I wasn't mad, I wasn't sad, but it made me uncomfortable. And I had feelings about it, right? And they aren't pleasant, but they're not, I don't know if they're bad either. I just feel some type of way. I think that's the hardest thing, is that working with boys, and I've had young Black boys as young as 6, that little emotion chart, those faces don't mean anything to them. And then if I tell them to create their own emotion chart, which I have most kids do, they might give me 4 faces. They might can draw 4, right? Whereas girls, whether they be, I mostly have Latina girls and Black girls, they can draw me about 27 pictures of faces. Boys is giving me 5 max. And the mad and the irritated usually look the same, right? And then there's like a blank face of like, I don't know. And I would say that would be the most challenging part, because when we can't help you, like, you can't describe your feelings, you kind of just go to the ones that are familiar, that people understand. And that's why things like, to Kevin's point about being threatened, like I used to work in a juvenile detention center, and I'll never forget this. This boy walked past this other boy and was like, "Hey, G, I like your shoes. What size shoe you wear?" And excuse my language, I'm gonna say exactly what he said. He looked and he was like, "Nigga, your size." And I was like, how we get here? Like, right? How we get here? Right. And it was just kind of like this idea of like, there was like an underlying something that was there around asking him his shoe size that made him think like, well, I'm gonna give you this answer just in case you think you're gonna take these shoes off my feet. You're not. So rather than give him the shoe size, I'm not even going to pretend that you might be asking me just because you're curious, because we're in jail. Why do you want to know what size shoe I wear?
Right.
Right. And so it's like this idea of like things that seem that are like benign can become not. Right. Because really what he was feeling in that moment was afraid, because we're like walking in a line, right? My unit, other boys in another unit. So now there's like 17 boys in a hallway, 17 boys and 3 adult male staff and me. And the boy stopped him and everybody stopped. He was like, "Hey, G, what size shoe you wearing?" Everybody like, "Look, not." And then it was like a pause. He was like, "Yo size." And then it was like, "Okay, everybody separate." Right. But like, he knew he had to do something. He had to do something and quick. Right. He couldn't just keep walking. He couldn't be like a 10 and a half. Just like I'm about to, in case you thought about it, or anybody else in that line thought about it, the next time they see me, I'm
Right.
not the one. Right.
So it was not just
Wow.
for him, it was for everybody
It
else.
was for everybody
Right.
in that hallway.
And
I'm not the one.
and I think a lot of
Wow.
times when people are acting out, they're not acting out just because of that one situation.
That's
I want
right.
everybody to know that if you mess with me, this is what you're gonna get, right? And that kind of thing. You know, you have convicted me, Dr. Barry. I've been writing this book. I hadn't completed it, but it's entitled "Mad as Hell and Don't Know Why." You know, and so I am absolutely gonna finish my book.
Yes.
You know, let's do this. Let's do a pulse, and as we get the pulse going, we'll bring up some folk
Yeah.
from the barbershops and the hair salons. Okay, let's Dr. TT it up.
So, Kevin, one of the things that we do every show is try to get an idea of what people are feeling out there at this moment. And we usually say, how are you feeling at this moment in the pandemic? And I think it still works because we're still in the pandemic, but in a different phase of it. And as people have come back together, a lot of these dynamics we're talking about, frictions are happening. So if there was a word that characterizes how you're feeling right now, Doctor, what would that word be? And type it into the chat. And then type as many words that come to mind for everybody out there for the next 60 seconds, as many words as possible. Don't worry about spelling, just get the words in, and the team behind the scenes will build a cloud. And for those of you out in social media land, you can use your Q&A box and put as many words as you can in the next 60 seconds. And then we're going to see what that tells us about what's going on out there.
Let's get them in there. Let's just really get them in there now. I want to get a good feel for it. Bring up Dr. Carol Ritter. Dr. Ritter has been with us for since the inception. She is an absolute wonderful resource and a wonderful family member. She is.
Let me just say, I just see her camera is off.
Camera just went off. Okay, she was on. She was on, and then she just came off. Well, bring up Dr. Cooper, Dr. Sharon Cooper. Dr. Cooper is another one of the staples in the cutting edge space. And Dr. Cooper, how are you doing today?
As well, all is well, thank you. How's everyone doing?
Absolutely wonderful. Your take on the
Come on, let's snap her up first.
Snap her up. You know,
right.
You know, she's so glamorous. You just look so wonderful every time. You know. So what's your take on what's happening, Dr. Cooper?
Oh, I'm okay, inspired, but
Okay.
I just want to touch upon a couple of areas, key points. The criminal justice system.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have seen that shift since the 1870s. And if you look back in history, you would see how in Alabama, it went from a population of majority white prisoners to Black prisoners, became from 90% and it shifted to 80% Black. So, and then we're going to also look at the history of the criminal justice system and how it has been used to be able to control African Americans. And then we look also in terms of the male figure in a house. And when Dr. Hart mentioned how, remember the movie Claudine, you're too young to probably remember that, and how we ran and, put things away so the male figure would not be in the home. When you remove the male figure, which is a key figure in that household, you also, those are residual effects, the absenteeism of the male. We are taught to think, oh, family, a household with a mother and a father. When that person, that key element is removed, then we look at the role that the female, the mother has to play, both mother and father. So that's where, the perception is, oh, she's a harsh, woman, she's a man, and this and that and the other. So the misconception is we have this systemic issues and challenges that have implications on the family, even as of today. And it dates back to, after slavery and all. And if there's one last thing I'm going to say, I don't know if you all had the opportunity to see, it's a short movie, less than 5 minutes, by Tom Hanks. And it's called How to Rig an Election, the racist history of the 1876 vote. And it shows how after slavery, we had people who were, involved in politics. And then we had people who were upset with especially in the South, the shift in how the political and ownership and how we were progressing as African Americans, and how can we be able to better control that particular, I'm trying to find the words, I'm lost for words, how we can control that infrastructure. So I think it's important, if you have not seen that, it's less than 5 minutes. Take a look at it. And you thought the election, in the past, but look at this and how it has shaped America and how it has shaped African Americans after the Civil War, and the implications which we're still feeling as of today. And as far as the family structure, as far as economic development, generational wealth, and so forth. So just take a look at it.
Yeah,
Wow, that's
the
powerful.
crew just dropped it in the chat. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah,
Because
the
in
other
some states, you may not be able to show that. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But it came out about 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
That's
why
a
we had the
powerful
cutting.
piece.
That's why we had the cutting edge, because we can do it. But let me see. One of the things that you alluded to, and I'm going to tee you up, Dr. Ritter, is the economic piece. When you take the man out of the house, how you can really create generational poverty, because the so-called quote unquote breadwinner is no longer present, right? Right. In particular with mass incarceration. And that kind of thing, all of those things have economic implications in the African American community, and that's not something that people talk about as much as I think we need to pay attention to.
And one last point, we have these diversion programs. We need to make these diversion programs accessible to all nationalities, because those are opportunities, instead of people being engaged in the criminal justice system behind bars. It's a good way to break the cycle, what we call recidivism, and it's a good key way to connect people to other resources as far as employment, housing, and all those elements that are contributory to people using substances and engaging in the criminal justice system.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Cooper. Dr. Carol Ritter, she is our resident OBGYN gynecologist. Hey, what's up? How you doing?
I think I need a hair person.
Nothing wrong with your hair.
We got a whole set.
We got plenty.
I'm in the barber shop.
We got plenty of people. I mean, they can have somebody over there in 10 minutes. I mean,
Sorry,
Pop up.
I'm having a bad hair day. I'm so sorry.
No. Go ahead, Dr. Ritter.
I'm just listening so intently, because this is so layered and so rich and so deep, and at a level that I haven't entered before. So this space is perfect, and I have more questions and I can actually write down. But I love the family sciences. I mean, the Department of Family Sciences. I had to look. I'm like, what is that? And then I see it was like family studies before we study families, but the sciences in the families and the communities, I'm just like, it's just like opened up a part of me that I hadn't thought of before, because I'm a gynecologist and I usually just think of the poor women and the children, and the women without, any support. And yes, the men can sometimes be there, but not be there, even in the world of a father in the house who is not there emotionally, and that hurts. And I think that if we did bring, the fathers into Planned Parenthood, we wouldn't have had the issues so much with issues that we have now with Planned Parenthood's closing, because parenthood is not just about women, but Planned Parenthood is somehow just evolved into women. That's wrong, right?
Right.
And then, we're told as women to lean in. Okay, that book about leaning in, that's really leaning in and being a man, at the table. So, I mean, we do get that patriarch message for women in, throughout the whole time we're growing up. But then we're told that I just heard one of my daughter's friends, saying that she's not doing anything, and she's got 3 kids at home, I'm not doing anything. So I'm like doing all the work with, you know, cooking and cleaning and taking care of the kids. So, I mean, we do have problems with how we have approached this, but starting in the community and bringing everybody back into the family unit is rich. So anyway, I'm gonna stop talking
That's
before I pull my hair out.
That's rich, Dr. Ritter, because you know this whole notion of family is so critically important. And if there are mechanisms that are designed either intentional or unintentionally, that's dismantling the family, we need to look at those things, because you know we're never really corrected if we don't know what's causing it, right? And so
Yeah,
it's
so the
important for us
science
to have these
behind
kind
it
of
is
conversations. Yeah,
really interesting way to look at it, you know?
I agree, Dr. Roy. You're doing a lot of great work. Let's do this. I'm gonna bring up the word cloud, and Sandra Jenkins and Miss Reynolds and everybody. You all get ready. I'm gonna tee you all up. Informed, inspired, right? Lifestyle, concerned, empowered, unsettled, encouraged, relative, loose ends, blessed, layered, hopeful, changed, amazed, curious, exhausted, personality, confident, worn out, inspired to change, hopeful but realistic. And of course, what it's just screaming out at us is I'm inspired and I'm informed. And that's one of the things that we do here. We do infotainment. We inform you, but we also entertain you as well. So we can keep it light, and we can have fun in having these conversations.
Yes.
And I think it's important that we have that balance here on the cutting edge. Miss Sandra Jenkins, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Mayor Neil.
Hi, things go good. You know, this whole notion of toxic masculinity, what's your take on it?
And just tell our new guests who you are.
Oh yeah, that'd be good. I think everybody else would know you, but Dr. Roy wouldn't know you. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, my name is Sandra Jenkins. I'm the owner of Naturalist Hair that's located in a municipality of Cheltenham Township, located in Philadelphia, near Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And we serve men, women, and children in our salon. And what is, provokes my thoughts on this subject, I see a breaking free with parents bringing their sons, or young men that are coming in for services, or there may be college students that utilize our services because they want a change. You know, they want to be in an environment where they can be something beyond the stigmas that we're talking about here tonight. So that is what I experience. And that means a breaking free has a lot to do with how they look. And what they do is they come in and they request those natural hairstyles, which is cornrows, Nubian locks, even some of them will even get their hair blow dried and straightened. So that does not remove any of their, masculinity, as we might say. That just gives them, just a chance to be free and be themselves. So that's the experience that we're having at Naturalist.
That's interesting. Thank you so much for that. Dorothy Reynolds, going down to Pine Bluff, Arkansas.
First, this is snap for
Just give some snaps
for Sandra. Sandra, these are your snaps.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank
Love
you.
you, sweetie.
Now we'll keep them going for Dorothy. Hey, Dorothy.
Absolutely. Hey, Dorothy
Hey.
Reynolds, how you doing? Pine Bluff, Arkansas. What's
Arkansas.
up?
I'm doing fine. Thank you. I'm Dorothy Reynolds, and I'm co-owner of Impressive Styles Beauty and Barbershop and Elite Cuts Barbershop. And we provide family service. So the wife can go on the beauty side if the husband is on the barber side, and so can the children, vice versa.
That's wonderful.
When our barbershop was closed due to one of the barbers having an accident, the guys just refused to let a female manage their hair.
Wow.
They decided to just wait.
And
and
grow
not-
afros.
and not allow it, where there was some who was looking at it from a sexual point of view, welcomed a female touching their hair.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it's just a variety of opinions. I visited the cosmetology school in my city today, and we were completing forms for kids to enroll in the cosmetology class. And we interviewed a few of the guys, and none of the guys wanted to participate that we talked to earlier. And they found out that one guy had signed up and said yes, because he'll get 500 hours for completing that class. And all of a sudden, a group of them came back and signed up, and they said, I want to be in, I want to be in. So she ended up with too many guys. But it took just one guy to say, okay, I'll be in this class with all these females, is what they were thinking. That's the girl thing. They didn't want to have to manage the mannequins, the female mannequins, and can do roller sets, learn how to handle roller sets and trims on a female hair. But we explained to them, you make money doing both.
Right.
And maybe you won't be a barber or a stylist, you may be the owner, but knowing this information is going to be vital to you. So I think that's what changed the first young man's mind. And it just took one to decide that he would do it, and then the rest of them came.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you very much. It's always good to see you, Miss Dorothy Reynolds. It's hanging out.
Thank you, Mayor Neal.
Good. We have Katrina Randolph. She doesn't have her camera on, so if I know she was driving and stuff, so we don't want to interfere with her not driving, but we want to recognize Katrina Randolph, Trey Shay's beauty salon in Maryland. And
yes, thank you all for considering me. I'm still driving home, but always usual great conversation. I'm listening in though. Thank you so much.
We have to acknowledge you, young lady. We can't. It's sacrilegious
Thank
not
you.
to acknowledge you. Yeah. I want to be. We got just 8 minutes left.
Unbelievable.
Roy, you see how quickly time flies when you're having fun. I want to talk a little bit about rites of passage. When I was growing up, we had Boy Scouts, and we had a lot of sports, Little League, and things like that. And so we had mentors who were technically coaches and people in that space. The social media has taken a lot of children's interest away from sports in the way that we did it. And so I was wondering to what effect has the social media kind of infusion into our culture has taken away the connection between the mentors, the natural mentors in the community, and what impact has that had on them understanding what manhood may look like in a healthy way or not. And Dr. Roy, you, and then I want Dr. Hart, I want you to chime in on that.
So it's a fantastic question. I think rites of passage have always been very important when we talk about masculinity issues. I think there's a sense that the rites of passage or the institutions that people felt were in place 40, 50, 60 years ago have diminished for sure. And I do think that actually, having a cell phone, having some kind of social media is a rite of passage in and of itself. I think people finally feel like they are a person when they're connected in that way. But I think that what is missing, and you're right, is that kind of person-to-person contact that's much more subtle. It's not sensationalized. It's slow as opposed to fast clips where you get a TikTok that'll last a few seconds and you just keep booming and scrolling. But that kind of slow back and forth between people in your community. And I also think that being able to identify folks in your community who are doing things that you want to do and you could learn from them, whether they're owning a business, whether they're running a shop, whether they are a mentor to kids in their community, whatever. That you don't see a lot of that on social media. You don't have the experience of learning from a person in that way, kind of sitting at their feet, listening. And so I wish there was a way to kind of slow things down a little bit without without disempowering folks, to kind of build those relationships again. And I think a lot of young men feel that they've got to know the answer. They're not going to ask for help. They're kind of, their worth is based on the fact that they can stand on their own 2 feet and be individuals and not rely on anyone. But I think one of the best things about rites of passage is just that you need to rely on folks that came before you to show you a viable path. Now you do with it what you will, but you have some kind of guidelines. And if we don't slow down and listen to what those guidelines are, we're left with making them up as we go. And that is not a recipe for a lot of health and well-being in our communities. I don't think so.
Dr. Roy, one of the places that really slows down is the Black barbershop.
You're right.
Hey, Dr. Roy, it doesn't matter how much hair you have. You're going to be there all day.
Yeah, you're right.
So when I'm there, I'm listening as well. And here I see 2 young fathers, with a 3-year-old. These are really young men who've had kids early in life. And they're talking to one another about their kids, almost in a whisper. So it's an interesting space where that kind of role modeling and learning can happen. And this is why we want our barbers and stylists to have some of that family science insight, because I think they may see things early. And maybe there are resources that we can infuse into the network that can be helpful. Hopefully that could be the case.
All right, Dr. Hart, your take on this whole notion of modeling behavior, rites of passage, etc. And I will let Dr. Barry have the last word. I got a question for her. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Dr. Roy was spot on. It was what I was thinking too, and that is, historically, the rites of passages came with actual interactions, physical interactions. There's whenever for the young pup or calf, or there would be live interventions. You'd be able to catch someone right where they are. Hey, this isn't it, and that carries a lot with folks. I mean, especially young minds, like those, young people are very hands-on, and so to have, like Dr. Roy is right, to have that be replaced with social media, I think has been a significant travesty, I think, for the life course of a lot of men who are growing up. People talked about coaches and mentors. I mean, those were all live. And the thing that I remember even growing up and like having access, right? That's another thing, access, because it takes me back to when you're removing Black and brown men from the community. There's no access to them. They're in prison, right? And so who's there, right? Like who's left to engage in the rites of passage? And dare I say, the rites of passages have also evolved when you keep taking men out, and now women are left to kind of figure out, as Dr. Cooper was referring to. But I want to speak on the social media thing, because I gave a talk not too long ago about that. And what's scary about that is when you remove, it's one thing to remove live interactions, like the systemic nature, the going back and forth, the barbershop talks, the hugs, the cries, modeling it in front of these young folks. And you replace it with TikTok videos, YouTube videos, And what it does is you are opening and casting a wide net of characters who, dare I say, don't know what they're talking about. And then they're not grounded in any kind of theoretical conceptual understanding. It's a lot of hot air. One of the guys that I highlighted in my talk, and he's been dealt with very seriously, is Andrew Tate. He's been the poster child for what toxic masculinity is. And if you do your research, if you go to any of his videos, and most of it has been taken out, millions of views. I'm not talking about tens and hundreds, millions of views. Millions of views. Andrew Tate. And I dug a little bit deeper. Here's the scary part. And when you think about the timing of development, one of his biggest consumers of his information, young college men.
Wow.
Young college men, the biggest consumers of it. And also when you go a little bit further, like just young adult men in general, but the views that he was espousing, I mean, he is the poster child of toxic masculinity. And so when you mention social media, it's not just him, there's other folks who are out there and they're feeding garbage. And so we remove the live interactions, the tenderness and care that comes with being there and being in person with young people, to just flipping the video and sharing it with friends and then talking about how I'm going to do this, this, and this. And yeah, he's right. Yeah, I'm going to tell, get with her. And no matter, it's scary. I just want to ground us around like how scary it has been for the last few years that social media, male content creators have almost created a new breed of what masculinity is, to the point where it has fatal implications, and it also has a lot of criminal implications. And that's why I said he's the poster child, because what he has done, even in his personal life, has allowed a lot of criminal issues to come his way. And that scares me when I think about young boys listening and learning and picking up. That's scary to me. So I just want to highlight that.
Good. Well, I'm going to give you, Dr. Berry, the last word to put all of this in capsule, right? Right. I normally do that, but I want to pass the baton to you to have you kind of give us the last words.
I'm giving summaries. Okay.
Whatever's on your heart as we come to the end.
I think again, Dr. Hart, it's just the way that now anybody gets to be a mentor, anybody, because everybody has the floor, and everybody has a platform, and everybody got a mic, and so they speak to the fears of masculinity, and they speak to those things as a way to incite and drive home the ugliest and nastiest versions of patriarchy and male dominance. It's scary. But I think when we think about toxic masculinity, kind of like my last thoughts about it is that being very clear about what that means, because what happens is when like academic constructs and phrases make it into the colloquial space, it just start doing whatever. Like it goes into colloquial space and people just start doing whatever they want to do with it. And it like loses its potency and loses the actual definition. And I think I cringe when I hear toxic masculinity, especially as it relates to Black men, because some of the things that are associated with toxic masculinity have come to be kind of like adaptive ways of being in spaces that are not safe. And we can't then like penalize you for like developing a way of being in a way to be safe, right? We talk a lot about like men being restrictive emotions. And to Dr. Hart's point, the dehumanization of Black men makes it that Black men really aren't allowed to express the full range of their humanity and their emotions. So then you can't be like, but you don't express your emotions. Well, also I go to jail, get killed, like when, where? So I think, when we talk about those things is that as the scientists, as the known people, that we have to push people towards nuance and really understand there's like a both and, that lots of things are happening at once and that's okay, but we have to acknowledge the things that are happening at the same time for lay people and for us to be more responsible with our academic language in the way we put it out into the world for consumption by lay people, because everything just goes awry. And then it gets applied incorrectly in people's personal lives. And we find a lot of strife. And there's people like Andrew Tate and the Black male versions of him getting on these things, saying wild stuff and using language that they kind of like piecemeal from like different places to kind of like spew their misinformation, much like COVID, about masculinity and the way it operates in families.
Well, I knew you would do it. Drop the mic. That's it. Let's give us some snaps. Let's give everybody snaps. You know what, Dr. Roy? Hey, you family now. You know, I mean, you family now. Hey, you know, so you're welcome back anytime. Okay, come hang out with us. Dr. Hart, it's always good to see you, man.
Always.
It's happy Father's Day in advance.
Thank you so much. And same to the fathers of the call.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Dr. Barry, you know how to put it where the cows can get it. I am so appreciative of your authenticity and just the spirit by which you exude your truth and your ability to be comfortable in the space of your truth. It resonates with me, and that's what we need. Thank you so much for sharing. Dr. T, that's going to do it for you and me. I'm a poet and don't know it. Well, for all of our barbers and stylists that are out there, thank you all so much for your contribution in all we do. To our team behind the scene, Meg and Maggie and Saraya and all, we thank them for the work that they do. And of course, Elijah Pugh, we can't leave him out for the music that get my head to bobbing right before the show every time we come on.
And Mayor, before you do your closing, bring Katrina up on the screen. She finally is on. And you can do your closing with her.
At least we need to be able to say happy. Hey, Katrina,
Hey,
how you doing?
Snapper.
But I love the
Hey,
green. I love the greens. Very nice. Good.
Thank you. I wanted to chime in, but since we over time.
No. I you know how you take it. I take a executive privilege to do this personal, what they call it, a point of personal privilege, right?
Oh, well,
to
thank
give
you so
some
much.
time. Go ahead.
No, I was just sitting here thinking about the masculine energies, and I was thinking about my upbringing, and I was thinking about when we were being raised by my mom, we never got to see a male figure in the home. So we were raised to operate in the masculine energy, because the way my mom raised us, she was like, I'm gonna teach you to survive, and I'm gonna teach you to never need a man for nothing. So that was always the mentality that we adopted growing up. So it took me so long to be able to operate in the feminine energy because of the way we were taught. So that was just one point that I wanted to give tonight. So that was great.
Good.
Thank you.
And we couldn't have left without that. That's why that's important to do that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Good.
So thank you so much. It's good to see all of you.
Good to see you. Love you. And
Yes.
we'll do this again. Dr. T, man, hey, love you, my man. This was a fabulous exchange. Just a great show. As always, this show is designed to be a platform, a safe space for authentic conversations. And we absolutely unequivocally did that this evening.
Indeed we did.
And as always, I like to leave you with these two words. Remember that I love you with the perfect love. But more importantly, remember this: you got the power. Until the next cutting edge, be safe. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
See you next time.